Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Thank you all for tuning in to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Evan Worley, and we are back with another Friday episode. Happy Friday, or good weekend. I don't really know how to say that, but for everybody who's listening, I don't know when you're listening to this, but I hope it's on Friday when it comes out. Weekend's looking... Weekend for me, at least, the weekend's looking pretty open for now. Right now, I just have practice scheduled with my 13U team in Rockwall, so I'm just trying to figure out what we're gonna end up doing. We have a game later tonight with the 14Us, so I have to figure out, who we're playing. The guy who's running the team for the 14Us didn't tell me where it was at for the past 3 days. It took me forever. It was like pulling teeth trying to get out of them, but found out where it is, so I will be there tonight. That's pretty much all I have on the docket, really. Friday, nothing too much. Saturday, just have to practice, nothing too much after that. Keeping up to date on me, just got my okay for orientation with FC Dallas, so I start my job there on Wednesday. Pretty stoked about that, because I get a tour of all the facilities and everything like that, and I get to use all of the equipment and all that kind of stuff that they have. Kind of just get to play around with that. Not the biggest soccer guy in the world, but when you're trying to work in sports, get in where you fit in, I guess. Nothing too crazy about that. Besides that, nothing really too exciting. But let's move on to the news of the week. So first off, I wanted to talk about the seeming, I don't know how to even phrase this. It's a pretty smooth transition at the hot corner for the Oakland Athletics this weekend. Everybody knows by now, they lost Matt Chapman, which is a huge loss for pretty much any team. Matt Chapman is a top 5 third baseman in the game. You can argue top 3, I would say, with his, platinum glove award-winning defense, and he has a lot of pop in that bat, and he's one of the best players in the game. I'll put it like that. And when you lose a guy like that, especially when you are the A's, and you're not you're not overwhelming teams with talent. You're just like that gritty, sabermetric team that just knows what they're doing and knows how to win. And they do have their spells with getting lucky a bit. They've had a few walk-off grand slams and won a lot of games this year via the walk-off. And they do have a solid lead against the lead in the division with the Houston Astros, and it's not like they're really hemorrhaging for any wins or anything, because we're looking at the playoff picture for the American League, and I think the lowest odds by any postseason team right now is 93%, and it's Toronto. So the Oakland A's are at a 99.9% chance, so they're locked to get into the postseason. But you would expect losing somebody like that would be something incredibly detrimental to the team, but not for the Oakland A's. They brought in Jake Lamb, and Jake Lamb's been doing a hell of a job. He's been killing it for the Oakland A's in the past 3 games. He had 2 hits on Wednesday. He had an RBI single which was an important insurance run. And he's 5 for 11 on the year with 2 doubles, a homer, and 2 RBIs through his first 3 games with Oakland. Like, I don't know many people who can just fill in for a platinum glover and arguably the most important player on the entire roster and could just fill in so seamlessly and just, make it rather easy for them to, just live their lives and, just continue their push towards the postseason and continue their lead in the AL West. I know there's only a few games left and Houston is, started to slip a little bit, but they still, until you clinch that division, there's still a chance for someone, and we've seen crazier stuff happen. Like, as baseball fans, we have always seen crazier things happen. Even as sports fans, like, you can look at, let's go to the NBA. I like to bring up the NBA because I'm a big NBA guy, but, like, the whole thing going around is the Oklahoma City Thunder had, like, a 0.2% chance of making the playoffs this year, and, they were a 5 seed going into the postseason. They just were killing the league left and right, and it's never, like, the cliche of all cliches, it ain't over till it's over. It really ain't over till it's over. Like, even this weekend, his going back to Tuesday night's loss in Colorado, the A's were 0 for 16 with runners in scoring position to that point, and up until the point where, Jake Lamb's RBI single extended the lead, to 2 runs to clinch the game. And, it was just the clutch hit that they needed and they haven't been able to get. So, if Jake Lamb is just able to fill in and, he's not going to give you the defense. Like, he's just not. There's nobody who can compare besides Nolan Arenado, maybe Manny Machado when he really cares, that'll be able to put up the type of defense that Matt Chapman will have. But, if he's able to come in and just get clutch hits left and right, just be able to fill in offensively where Matt Chapman was, I think that they'll be completely okay going into the postseason. They do have the pitching. Obviously, they have the pitching. They have the defense. It's just how are they going to be able to score runs, because they don't really, destroy you in the run game. So if you can just put the ball on the ground, or just put the ball in play and just make things happen that way, I think it'll be great for the Oakland A's. Like, they're 2-1 in his first 3 games. Great transition. And to end the season, they got San Francisco, who's going to be a hard game because they're obviously, fighting really hard for a playoff spot. They have, I think their odds are at like a 63% chance of making the postseason, but they currently sit at the 8th seed. You got the Dodgers, who have just clinched, so you don't know if they're going to, like, take their foot off the gas pedal a little bit and just kind of, ease into the postseason, or they're really going to go for it and, really just kind of, like, floor it into the postseason and just try and hold off the San Diego Padres, because the Padres might be eyeing that division crown. If the Dodgers actually take their foot off the gas, and then Oakland will end the season with Seattle, who pretty much out of the postseason, like we said, with the lowest postseason odds being at a 93.5%. I think Seattle has like a 4% chance of making it. They're only the second highest odds to get back into it, so it's not like, I think they're probably going to take their foot off the gas pedal and just kind of ease into the off season and do, typically what Seattle does, which is basically nothing, especially with Jerry Dipoto. Like, Jerry Dipoto likes to spend money, but Seattle isn't really a free agent hub, so we'll see what happens with them. But speaking of the Dodgers, well, that was the easiest bet in sports. Like, the preseason over under, who's going to win the division, who's going to be the first to clinch, all that kind of stuff. Los Angeles Dodgers, probably the easiest bet ever. I'm going to take them this year, and I'm probably going to take them next year, unless the odds for the San Diego Padres are incredible. The Dodgers, first team to clinch, obviously, they're kind of easing their way into the postseason. They just got to, hold off the pesky Padres, but they still have the Padres number. Like, the Padres are the little brother. They're going to be the little brother because they started off their first their first game of the series with a win. That was like their 8th in a row, I think, but they dropped the last 2. Fernando Tatis is only 1 for 12 in the series. Nothing really over the top great from the Padres when they come out and they start playing the Dodgers. But one thing that I'm not really sold on the Dodgers is, it was their second bullpen heavy game in their last 4 games, third in their last 5, and they have another one set for tomorrow, which, I should say today, because, if it's Friday, but on Friday, I'll put it like that. They're starting to incorporate their bullpen a little more. Last week, starter Tony Gonsolin, he allowed 3 runs in 5 innings in his relief appearance before the game. Roberts was saying that he needed more information whether to prepare for using like unconventional tactics is what he put, to kind of be like the Tampa Bay Rays, where the Tampa Bay Rays started with, they're throwing Sergio Romo to start the game, and it kind of threw everybody off their game, like what's going to happen. It was more with the whole thing in the opener. I think it's more just of a mind game. It's like, okay, we're starting off with Sergio Romo, and when that happens, it's like, okay, well, if they're starting with Sergio Romo, who are they going to go with next? And it just kind of throws you off your back foot, and because mainly, MLB teams can go in and they'll be like, okay, let's say we have Kershaw today. If we get to Kershaw, if it's between, the 5th and 6th inning, they're probably going to go with Scott Alexander or something like that, like somebody around those lines. Or if we go a little bit later, it could be Pedro Baez. And then, if Kershaw goes late in the games, we're going to get Kenley Jansen. So you can kind of go in with a mindset of like, okay, this is what they're going to do. From this part of the lineup, they might actually throw this guy in. So you have somebody to, actually game plan against and, have your like little setup. But with them starting like they just did with Brewster Gratterall, he started and he did inning and a third. You don't really know who they're going to go with next. And, after, as we, later saw, after they started Brewster Gratterall with 1 1/3 innings, they went right after that to Dustin May. And so, even though they were going to start Dustin May, it still kind of throws people off their back foot because it's like, okay, we're going to start Dustin May, so it's like, all right, we're getting ready for 100 miles per hour with like a 3 to 4 inch cutting action on that 2-seamer, and probably like this big curveball and a nice changeup. Like, all right, this is what we're doing, and it's like, oh no, we're starting Brewster Gratterall with a 100-mile-an-hour sinker, and it goes, okay, well, that's it. It just throws it off a little bit because you don't know if Dustin May is going to come in, and if he goes with Brewster Gratterall and then he throws a different starter along the way, kind of like, maybe a Tony Gonsolin, or, there's probably some minor leaguer that I forget his name, but he's 3-0 and he's got a 1.59 ERA. I forget his, I don't know. But you guys know what I'm talking about with the Dodgers. You could throw him out of nowhere and it just throws teams off their game. So I think it's more of just a mind game after, with all of that going on. The thing about the Dodgers, though, is it's like they're throwing their bullpen more and more, which they're kind of get their bullpen is, I think it's better to get them accustomed to these type of games and have them, come into the game just ready to throw no matter what. Because their bullpen, it's been known amongst baseball fans that their bullpen has been the problem the past few years. Like, their starting rotation has been pretty fine through the past, 2016, 17, 18, 19. Pretty much every time they won the division, their starting pitching was great. They had one of the best starting rotations in baseball. And then, their back end of the bullpen, it was Kenley Jansen, or, if people remember the earlier days, it was like Jonathan Broxton, like those type of guys. And, they were out here trying to... they were just trying to figure out who are we going to throw in between Broxton, Jansen, and the starters. It was just kind of filling those pieces in. And instead of actually going to get that marquee guy, they would always kind of get outfielder. They would always get outfielders. It was like, oh, we'll get an outfielder, we'll get an infielder, we'll get a position player, and we'll just kind of score more runs. And when they did go out to get the big bullpen piece, they traded away... I'm blanking on names right now. the right fielder. It's the right fielder for the Houston Astros that had the big rookie season last year. Let me Google this name really quick. Technical difficulties. Let's see. Who was the right fielder? Right. Damn. Can't spell either. Right field for Houston. I don't know why I keep trying to say Yonder Alonso. It is definitely not Yonder Alonso, but isn't it close? Now's not the time, phone. Don't go slow. Oh my god, I gotta go through all these people. It is really not worth it to do all this stuff, but I'm here anyways. Left field, Kyle Tucker. They don't even have him on the roster. Oh, gravy. Alright, sorry about that, everybody, but yeah, you know who I'm talking about. It was the the big bashing right fielder who they could have used. The Dodgers absolutely could have used him in the postseason because, like, against the Boston Red Sox, it was like they couldn't. The offense was the problem. They couldn't score any runs, especially against Chris Sale and David Price and all those guys. So I don't feel like their bullpen is good enough to actually reach the World Series this year. Their offense is doing fine. Their starting rotation is fine. It's been a little shaky here and there, but I still feel like I still don't really trust the Dodgers bullpen that much. Let's move on from there. In other news, the AL playoff is pretty much solidified. Like, unless the Toronto Blue Jays have an epic collapse and Baltimore wins every game for the rest of the season, it's not really going to work out. I think the playoffs is set. It's just rearranging like who's going to be what seed, but the NL playoff odds are still, they're still pretty close. It's still a pretty tight race. You got Cincinnati, who's off of win percentage. So Cincinnati has a 50%, but they have a 50% chance of reaching the postseason. St. Louis actually has a higher percentage of making the postseason, even though they're out of the playoff race, which is kind of strange to me. I think it's based off like strength of schedule, but the Cincinnati Reds 50%, St. Louis Cardinals are at a 66.7%, the Giants are at a 63%, and the Brewers are at a 42%. So there's still a pretty tight race in the NL playoff. And then I'm going to close this out with some last news. So Jacob deGrom left his start after 2 innings, gave up 3 runs in 2 innings. He kind of pulled something. It looks like he pulled his hamstring a little bit, and it was a minor injury, but still they wanted to take him out, and he was pretty frustrated, throwing water bottles and all that kind of stuff. He did say that he was going to finish out the season and pitch his next 2 scheduled starts. So Mets fans, no need to get alarmed with the Jacob deGrom issue. One thing that I think is pretty much solidified after that start is going to be that Jacob deGrom will not be your Cy Young Award winner. It looks like it's going to be a 2-man race between Yu Darvish and Trevor Bauer. Alrighty, everybody, I will be right back after this quick word, and we will come back and talk about the race in the NL East.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Alright, everybody, I am sorry. I have been misspeaking, all the time today. I don't know what's going on with me, but I finished that last segment by saying we're talking about the NL East. I meant we're talking about the AL East, because the AL East has gotten way, way, way more interesting And also, I figured out it was Yordan Alvarez, not Yonder Alonso. I got the Y and the A, pretty close, but I knew it wasn't Yonder Alonso. But yeah, Yordan Alvarez was who they traded to get Josh Fields a few years ago in 2017, I think it was. But anyways, the AL East. I did it again. What is going on? AL East. The Yankees are just beyond on fire. It's ridiculous. They figured out their catching problems, especially when it came to Garrett Cole. Kyle Higashioka is an absolute animal. So I was made familiar on who Kyle Higashioka was because he was the first real studly player I got on Tap Baseball on my phone, because I love that game and it's a lot of fun, and they've actually made the game a lot better than when they first started a few years ago. But he made it. He made a name for himself yesterday. Higashioka had 3 homers out of the Yanks 7 on the day. They made history with back-to-back games of 6+ homers. First time that's ever happened in franchise history for the Yankees, which is insane because of all the they've been around for about 100 years. Over 100 years, and all the Hall of Famers and guys with home run titles. The fact that they haven't had 6 homers in back-to-back games is insane. But they've absolutely killed the Toronto Blue Jays. They have another game tonight against Toronto to end out that series. But it's between Higashioka, being able to, drive the ball out of the ballpark. He seems like a way better option right now than Gary Sanchez. Luke Voit leads the league in homers. He's got 19 on the year. Clint Frazier went deep. The other day, DJ LeMay, who has the top 5 slugging percentage in baseball right now. He's been absolutely destroying the ball. He probably should be in the MVP talks up there with Tim Anderson, Jose Abreu, and all these other guys. But one thing that I think that makes this team scarier is that, Garrett Cole has figured out, or they figured out that Garrett Cole pitches better with Kyle Higashioka. So since being paired with Higashioka on September 5th in Camden Yards, Garrett Cole has a 0.90 ERA, which is only 2 runs over 20 innings, and has only given up 9 hits, 5 walks, while having 27 strikeouts against the Orioles twice and the Blue Jays once. Now, the Orioles aren't the toughest opponents, as we all are well aware of. They had their cup of coffee, flirting with the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. They did better than we all expected them to do, but they didn't do great. And then they did face the Blue Jays once, but the Blue Jays are also a young team, and I don't think Bo Bichette is fully healthy yet, so they don't really have a fully healthy Blue Jays team. The Blue Jays are also, overachievers by far. It's pretty easy to say. And also, Garrett Cole had a no-hitter in that game all the way into the 6th inning. It's kind of wild that it took forever for them to realize that Higashioka is going to be the catcher that should be paired with Garrett Cole, especially since, little known fact, back in, when they were 13 years old, they were teammates. So I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but there are select teams where, kids in high school and will play with a certain team. It'll be like the Dodgers select team, the Padres select team, Angels select team, whatever. Well, Cole and Higashioka were both members of the Angels scout team in in Orange County, and they had they've known each other since they were 13 or 14 years old. They also on that Angels team, the Angels scout team was Aaron Hicks. He's not like a big name, he's a big name, but he's not like the biggest threat on the Yankees, but still they've all known each other for forever. So the fact that it took them this long into the season to be like, all right, let's give you the most comfortable catcher you're with, instead of giving you Gary Sanchez, who let's call a spade, has been called lazy behind the plate multiple times by so many different people this season and in seasons prior, and then he's struggled behind the dish. So why just based off his name? If anything, like, if I was Aaron Boone and, he was lazy and, he wasn't, hitting tank after tank, like, he's striking out at a record rate. It's not anything that's above, it's not like slightly above average. Like, no, he's about to set a record for most Ks, and it's like, if we would have multiplied it to a normal season and he did the same thing, I think he would have crushed Mark Reynolds' record. I gotta double up on that, but everything I was reading was saying that he's striking out at an insane rate, just not hitting the ball. And if you're able to use Higashioka, who has the pop, he's been praised. He's 30 years old, and he just was on an opening day roster, so he's been able to survive based off his ability to call games. And if he has a rapport with your number one pitcher, not only your number one pitcher, but arguably the number one pitcher in baseball, you have that going for you. He's not lazy. He's a great defensive catcher. He's able to get some pop in his bat, as you can tell by his 3-homer game. I don't think that was, fully, a hoax, and all that. So, I mean, I think that the Yankees have, really found their groove, and, they lost, what was it? They lost like 7 or 8 in a row, and then they come out and win 7 in a row right off the bat. Just on a dime, switch it right up. DJ LeMahieu has absolutely been killing it recently. Like, it's insane what he's been doing. He's batting .373. He's got a .421 on base percentage. He's got a .627 slugging percentage, a 1.047 OPS. Like I said, 5th in the bigs, and he has a 184 OPS plus. Baseball Reference only has adjusted OPS plus, which apparently is different because LeMahieu's OPS plus is better than Luke Voit, but adjusted OPS plus, Luke Voit was better. I honestly don't know what any of that means, but I think if you just take it straight off OPS plus, I think that DJ LeMahieu was also in the top 5 in that. So, like, you have all that being said, you got the Yankees kind of figuring it out. Deivi Garcia looks like he's a solid option in the Yankees rotation. James Paxton has been pitching fairly well. Everything, I haven't heard of him, blowing games recently. I haven't been, totally in tune with the Yankees recently. But, if you got Garrett Cole, you got Deivi Garcia, and you got James Paxton in a 3-game, just a 3-man rotation going into the postseason with their type of with their bullpen, I should say, is, it's not something to be scoffed at. You have that going on. They have their last 3 series are against Toronto, Boston, and Miami. They can easily handle Miami. They've done nothing but just beat the brakes off of the Boston Red Sox this year, and they just crushed Toronto with what was it? I mean, they scored 20 runs the other day. Like, 20 runs. They've had 6 homers in back-to-back games. Like, I don't think they're scared of Toronto at all. I think they just beat the living out of the Toronto Blue Jays, and really kind of asserted their dominance. And with that, you have the Yankees stock going sky high. Tampa Bay is kind of going in the other direction. Tampa is 6-7 in September. Their last 3 series are against Baltimore, the Mets, and Philly. They are 2-3 against Baltimore. They got swept by Baltimore earlier in the year, and then they won a 2-game series. They won both of the 2 games a little bit later in the year. They've never played the Mets this year, but that's going to be one of Jacob deGrom's starts, so they're going to have to try and beat deGrom. And then they have Philadelphia to close out the year, who Philadelphia is still fighting for a playoff spot. I think that their chances of making it were at like 70% last time I checked. So, they're still fighting for the playoffs. Not only are they still fighting for the postseason, but they're also fighting for the 2 or the 1 seed in the NL East. They still have a chance. The Braves, they brought back Cole Hamels. He had a pretty not so good start. I mean, granted, he hasn't pitched in over a year. So we'll, hopefully, it'll be like a little slow incline. And hopefully we'll be able to get him enough reps before the postseason. But they haven't been really dominant. this past month. Tampa Bay, I mean, they're 8-6 in interleague, so they haven't really dominated the interleague play, and they have 2 of their last 3 series are against interleague opponents. In their last 12 games, they've been scoring 4.5 runs per game, and they've given up 4.41 runs allowed per game, and it's not looking great. It really is not looking great for the Tampa Bay Rays. One thing that they do have backing them up, though, is they are 11-4 in 1-run games, and they're 7-3 in games decided by 5 or more runs. So they do a really good job of keeping the game close. They're not really getting blown out. They've only, in games decided by 5 or more runs, it's only been 3 times that it's been against them. So they haven't done, they haven't been blown out this year at all. And they have a very good win percentage, over 700 against teams in games where it's a 1-run differential. So the fact that they're able to keep games close and they're so good in 1-run games, it shows that they're prepped for the postseason, and they're, they can get it done in the postseason. But here's the thing that worries me is that, the Yankees are going to come out and they're just going to start bashing homers left and right like nobody's business. And, really just, they'll just be able to outscore. The Yankees are going to give up runs, but I don't think that, their offense is going to be slowing down anytime soon. It could stop on a dime. It was able to turn around on a dime. It could absolutely stop on a dime. But, when they're hot, when the Yankees get hot, the Yankees get hot. And, if there's one time for an offense to get hot, they needed to do it in late September, and here we are. So this is something that we really need to keep an eye out on. And another thing on top of that is this affects more than just the 2 teams that are in the division. One team that is praying, that is holding on for dear life that the Yankees just thrive and Tampa, just crumbles, is the Minnesota Twins. So Minnesota, ever since 2002, they've made the playoffs, I think, 4 times, and every year, all 4 years, they made the postseason since 2002. I think it was 4 times. It could be a little bit more. But every time they make it to the postseason, they are eliminated by the New York Yankees. Every time. The last time they were not eliminated by the New York Yankees, it was the ALCS in 2002. They got beat by the Anaheim Angels at that time, and that was because the Anaheim Angels beat the Yankees in the first round. So the Yankees, they're just it's like a college team where you just see, they're just the little brother. It's like the Oklahoma thing where it's there's just something about the logo. There's something about the helmet where it's oh boy, here we go again. And, they beat you before they even walk out of the tunnel. That's the Yankees with the Twins. There's something about those pinstripes. There's something about that stadium. Before they even walk out of the tunnel, it's oh boy, here we go again, and it's over. I remember that wild card series. I think it was the second wild card series because the first one was the A's and the Royals. I think it was the year after where it was Minnesota and the Yankees, where Minnesota hung up at a 4 spot in the first inning with a couple homers, and then in the first inning, in the bottom of the first, the Yankees, they hung 5 or 6 on them, and it was just over after that. I just remember Didi Gregorius hitting a mammoth homer, and the game was just you could tell just by the face of the Twins. It was oh, we got 4. Is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? Then they gave up 5 or 6, and you could tell in their face immediately it was a wrap. There was nothing to them, and the Twins. Every year, or not, I shouldn't say every year, but last season we thought the same thing. They were killing it. If there's one time where they can go into the postseason and they can feel good about facing the Bronx Bombers, it is going to be last season. And they just got whipped up and down the greater New York area. And, the Twins, they have been absolutely on fire. They're 11-4 in the last 15 games. They're 2 games back of the Chicago White Sox right now. They have one more game tonight against the White Sox, and they got the Cubs, the Tigers, and the Reds. They've had very good They've had a very good offense. They've been fairly balanced. Byron Buxton has found the power and has really been going for it. He's been launching balls left and right. He's been incredibly exciting using his speed and power and, really turning into coming from a 3-tool player to a 4-tool player, and then hopefully he'll be able to, boost that batting average and get to that 5-tool spot, but that we always thought he was going to be when he was the second overall pick in the draft, I think in 2012 or 2013, 2014, something around there. I just remember he went behind Carlos Correa. But yeah, it's like, they've had 4.7 runs per game in September. They've allowed 3.2 runs per game. So that's in their last 15 games, they're outscoring their teams by a run and a half per game. I just saw today Josh Donaldson got kicked out after hitting a home run in Chicago. I got to see how that. Let's actually do a quick little check-in on how that game is going. So we see, where is it? The MLB TV app. Here we go. So let's see what the score is. So Twins are up 3-2. Bottom 7, they got runners on first and third. Buxton hit a solo homer in this game. So, if they're able to pull this game out, they really need to win this division just so they can stay away from the New York Yankees. I would love to see what this team can do in the postseason, not running into the Yankees and psyching themselves out. So, if the White Sox are able to pull out and win the division, I really, really do not think that the Minnesota Twins are going to fare so well against the New York Yankees this year. I think it's just in their head. It's that type of thing. So we'll see how Tampa, can finish the season, how the Yankees can finish the season, and, really how that'll affect Minnesota's run in the postseason. And, even that, it may even, affect the White Sox. Who really knows, depending on, their stance and who they end up playing. Everybody's so close that if Tampa loses out on the number 1 spot in the AL East, who knows, they could be going down to 6 or who knows, 6, maybe 7. We don't really know. Alrighty guys, I'm going to be taking a quick break and I'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, everybody, and we are back. So I wanted to, get this segment to talk about the bubble. So the bubble has been confirmed. So we're getting the AL playoffs in the in Chavez Ravine and Petco Park in LA and San Diego. Then the NL playoffs is going to be in Houston and in Globe Life Park in Arlington. And then we're also going to get the World Series in Globe Life Park in Arlington. So, the bubble is a completely new concept. We've never played baseball games, not just baseball games, but in baseball, playoffs in a neutral site. I think a neutral site is a little, it's obviously it's going to be different for everybody because there's no home field advantage, all that. All those cliches, all those, all this stuff. But one thing that I think that we can talk about is who is going to be affected most by, being in a bubble. So the only thing we can really compare it to is basketball, because, and even then we can't really compare it that much to basketball, because the basketball bubble, they're playing every game has been played every other day. You get 24 hours of rest in between games, and that's pretty much it. You get your game finishes, you got 24 hours off, and then you're back and you got practice and all that kind of stuff the next day. You have 24 hours to rest, you get treatment. Baseball, you're used to playing every day. You're used to, getting up in the morning, playing every day. So the way that I think it wears, like the wear and tear of the season goes on, and the wear and tear of just playing every day went for the older teams, kind of like, we're seeing, Miami and Boston and, Denver in these playoffs, that have kind of, made it is, they're young. They're the young teams. You got Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and Marcus Smart is a pretty young dude. Most of the lineups are young guys, and they're playing the youngsters. They got for Miami, Goran Dragic. He's not necessarily the youngest dude in the world, but he's not old by any stretch of the imagination. Jimmy Butler has been in the league less than 10 years. Tyler Hero, rookie. Duncan Robinson, rookie. Bam Adebayo, it's his second year. There's a ton of youth being played in these games. Jokic 24, Jamal Murray 22. Gary Harris has been in the league for like 5 years. It's a lot of young people, and all the older teams are getting kind of ran out. And I think that what's going to happen with baseball is that it's going to allow the older teams to kind of hang on. I feel like it's going to have the reverse effect for baseball. They're going to have, just the wear and tear of the flying and, throwing every day with the utmost intensity and like all the fans and everything like that. Like obviously the intensity is going to be there, but the fans, the crowd noise, I think is going to, make it a little bit easier on teams in the postseason. And I think it's going to be really, really weird, which is why in the last segment I said, I like the Yankees to keep chugging along, because they're injury prone, yes, and they have some vets on their team, but I think that the lack of travel that's going to happen, they, especially if they get a home series, if they get a home series to start the playoffs, I think that they could probably make a run at the World Series, even though I do like the Oakland Athletics. Even after Matt Chapman went down, I may have to reassess that after an episode or two, but I was just looking at this. They posted an article on CBS Sports, and they were talking about who is, benefited from, the bubble idea, and it's a fair question. Who benefits? Because if you're playing every other day, right, and there is no extra day in, in the rest period, it's safe to say that you're going to need, well, obviously you need rotation depth and all that kind of stuff. You need depth in the pitching, but, if are they in the bubble, it's can you stretch out a 3-man rotation that way? It's not 2 flying day, 2, if we have 2-3-2 or 2-2-1-1-1, there's an extra day of rest in between because it's a travel day. Since there is no travel, there is no extra day of rest. And, it could wear rotations rather thin. And, I think it could possibly have a reverse effect, especially for teams that have, older rotations, but they have a little bit deeper of a rotation. One thing that they mentioned on this, on the CBS Sports article is, the rotation depth. They looked at teams that have, 5 starters that have, an ERA plus of 100 or greater, and 5 or more starts, and average on an ERA plus is 93. So if you have a 93 or better ERA plus, you're above average for pitching. And so only 3 teams have 5 pitchers that meet the marks. They have Cleveland, obviously the Dodgers, and then the Miami Marlins. The Miami Marlins actually have 5 pitchers that meet those marks. So, and then there's other teams like the White Sox, the Twins, the Reds, Rockies, Mariners. They each have 4 starters with an ERA plus of 100. So that's definitely something that needs to be like weighed in. It's like it's gonna be a lot of it's not different. The pitching is still with the utmost importance, but teams that don't have that depth at pitching is like the Blue Jays, the Athletics. They only have 1 starter who qualified for that. The Rays, the Braves, Giants, Phillies, Mets. They only have 2 apiece. The Braves rotation has had problems on top of problems, so it looks like if they were able to make it to the bubble and get past their first round, granted their arms are young, but they're still going to have to utilize Touki Toussaint, even though Touki is just Julio Teheran 2.0, to where Braves fans, me personally, like, I love the guy. I think he's a great kid, and I want him to take that Lucas Giolito type jump to where he's able to go from one of the lowest ERAs to to being actually a great pitcher in the league. I think he has that talent in him, but he's been up here for he's been up and down for the past couple of years, and he hasn't really been able to show it. I don't really I'm not really a huge fan of that. Atlanta, they're kind of banking on Max Fried and Cole Hamels being healthy. Ian Anderson, is he actually like a legitimate star? We're going to find that out. And, they're also banking on Kyle Wright. They have a very young rotation going into it, but there's a lot of question marks. Like, they need those kind of vets that have just battled through the dog days to just be like, all right, I think the guys who, have the older rotations that are like, they've battled through the dog days. They know what to do. They know how to pitch instead of just throw. I feel like those guys are going to make noise in the bubble. Going down the list, they have, there's going to be like no days rest. There's going to be days because they're going to have set teams play in set stadiums, so it's like they have, the 8 teams, they play the wild card round and then they go to the divisional round. And so each team gets their own stadium. So, they could play every single day. And if they play every single day, then it's like the bullpen, you need the length in the pen that isn't going to be, that isn't going to like really get flustered by the noise and, by the intensity of it. The Giants, White Sox, Marlins, Athletics, Rays, they have, they've had 30 or more appearances that came on 0 days rest. So, it's like these guys have been able to go in and, put a lot of like energy and, they've put a lot of wear and tear on their bodies before the season started. Now, it could be good and that could be bad. That could be detrimental to the team. We really aren't going to know until we get there. But I feel like this is going to be the year where some team just out of nowhere just comes up and just takes it. We're seeing that in the bubble in the NBA. Nobody thought before the season started that Boston and Miami would be in the conference finals or Denver would be in the conference finals against the Lakers. Like, I think out of all of those 4 teams, the only one you would actually pinpoint being like, oh, that team's going to win is the Lakers. And obviously, because they had LeBron on their team, but it's like, who's really the number 1 team? Like, you look at it this year, the number 1 team in the American League is the Chicago White Sox, who are just full of, like, inexperience. There's a lot of inexperience on that team. The only person who really has a deep playoff experience, and I mean a deep playoff experience, is Yasmani Grandal. And, not many people have actually, been through it. You go to the Tampa Bay Rays. The Tampa Bay Rays, they haven't really been through it. Oakland A's, they're the top of the league. They haven't really, been that deep in the playoffs. Like, none of those 3 teams have been to an LCS in a hot minute. It's it doesn't look like it's going to be the Houston Astros. They don't really have the rotation for it. The Yankees, they could power through and make it to the LCS. I wouldn't put it past them. And then you got the Toronto Blue Jays. Like, maybe the Toronto Blue Jays, flip a switch and turn it around. Maybe, if the Twins, finally face a team that's, not in the Bronx, maybe they could make the run and, have the magical season that the Twins fans thought they were having last year. And even if you look at, the NL, the number one team in the NL, the Dodgers, there's huge question marks in the bullpen, especially if they're on 0 days rest. Their bullpen is not really consistent enough, especially with me having all my friends be Dodger fans because I grew up in Los Angeles. Like, every day it's just like I'll get a text like, I can't believe that we're putting this guy in, and nobody in like Dodger Nation has faith in their bullpen. And their starting rotation is rather thin, even though they do have, like it says, 5 starters with an ERA plus of over 100. They say numbers never lie, but sometimes numbers lie. And I feel like that's going to be a time where, especially now, where the Dodgers, I don't know if they're going to make the World Series. I don't think they are. The Padres, they were a team that didn't make the playoffs last year, and they're looking at, the number 2 seed in the NL. Like, obviously they're not going to be the number 2 seed because the top 3 are division winners, but, they're the second best team in the National League, and, they're legitimate World Series contenders. Just out of nowhere, just like, oh, here we go. Here they are. But are they really legitimate contenders? Like, they had the overhaul to the bullpen with Trevor Rosenthal, and, they got a few relievers, and, they got some pretty big names like Mitch Moreland. They did a lot at the deadline to really, boost their legitimacy, but, are they, like, there's just so many question marks, and, with the question marks that are given, the bubble doesn't take away question marks. The bubble actually adds more question marks on top of that. So, like, this bubble experience is going to be absolutely insane. I don't know who I like to win the World Series anymore. I don't know who I even like to win game by game anymore, because we're not going to know. And I think that one thing that you can bet, one thing that you can take to the absolute bank, is that this is going to be the most insane playoffs I think we've ever had in the history of baseball, not just on circumstance, but off action in general. I feel like this is going to be, like, we're just going to see some of the best baseball we have ever seen played, or we're going to see some of the worst baseball ever seen played. Either way, we're going to be making history. All right, everybody, I'm going to be taking my final break, and I will be right back recapping what to watch for the weekend. I will be right back.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
All right, everybody, let's close this episode out the way that only we know how to. So I got the schedule out in front of me from ESPN.com. So I'm reading. I got Friday, September 18th, Saturday, September 19th. I'm going over the matchups just right there, mainly because they don't do 3 days ahead, especially because, the pitchers are kind of, announced maybe the day before, maybe not even that. So, looking at it, just looks like on Friday we have a couple doubleheaders. We got St. Louis and Pittsburgh, got a doubleheader. We got Washington, and we have Miami as a doubleheader. And that looks like it's it for doubleheaders that day. Every single team is playing, though. You got Carlos Martinez versus Trevor Williams. That's going to be a pretty good matchup, especially when St. Louis is battling for, the second seed in the NL Central, which is a guaranteed playoff spot with Cincinnati. Cincinnati's going to be taking on the Chicago White Sox, and they're going to be starting TJ Antone, which I am a name that is unfamiliar to me. So that's a bold strategy, putting a lot of pressure on the young buck, because if I don't know who he is, and I actually watch these games all the time, like that's kind of it's kind of iffy. I don't know if that's really the best move for him, but hey, maybe he's out there and he throws a gem and really just comes in and rubs it in my face. Who really knows? Philly at Toronto looks like it's going to be a pretty good game. We got Zach Eflin versus Robbie Ray. That'll be a pretty good game. Let's see, going down, Zach Plesac versus Michael Fulmer, Cleveland with Detroit. Cleveland has lost like 8 straight. They need a win so bad. They might fall all the way to the 8th seed. They still are, they're still pretty much a lock to get into the postseason, but they still need they need to get some wins. They really need to turn it around, and I really think that this is the series to get it done. Atlanta and the Mets is going to be a pretty big game because Max Fried is going to be throwing. I think this is his first start since he came back from injury. So really big start. The Cubs just took over Atlanta for the 2nd seed in the NL. So in the NL playoff race, that is. So a little bit rougher for the Atlanta Braves in the postseason, especially with with their rotation being the way it is. So they really need to catch a dub there. Friday, you got the Yankees going up against Boston. Jordan Montgomery versus Martin Perez. I wouldn't really watch this game unless you're just trying to see a home run derby by the Yankees, because I figured their 6 home run streak is not going to end tomorrow. If it does end today, then, so be it. They'll probably just keep it going. Tampa versus Baltimore seems to be a pretty big game now. Tyler Glasnow versus Alex Cobb. Really big game for the state of Tampa Bay, especially with with the Yankees facing off against the Boston Red Sox, who they've just had their number all season. And as of late, really, I think they've won like 20 of the last 25 against Boston. So, I mean, they've just absolutely killed them. The Dodgers versus the Rockies looks like that'll be a pretty fun game to watch. The Dodgers have yet to announce who they're going to start. Probably going to have another bullpen game, their opener, versus Ryan Castellani. Looks like the Colorado Rockies are going to throw a guy that they haven't. I've never seen that man's name, so it looks like a new guy looking to get some experience, some big league experience before the season's over. I don't really blame them. With their chances, I think their chances at the postseason are pretty much over. So, sorry, my nail was bugging me. So I can see like why they wouldn't, just go all out and throw whoever they want into the fire. Let's see, Milwaukee versus Kansas City. That's going to be big because Milwaukee still has a fighter's chance of getting back into the postseason. Danny Duffy versus Adrian Hauser. Not a bad pitching matchup there. That could actually be a fun game. The doubleheader. Second game of the doubleheader between Washington and Miami. You got Patrick Corbin. So in that one day, you're getting Eric Fede, Sixto Sanchez, Patrick Corbin, and an undecided pitcher. So so you got some pretty good. You're gonna have some pretty good arms throwing tomorrow for the Washington and Miami games. Rich Hill versus Kyle Hendricks. You got Minnesota versus Chicago. I think that's going to be the game of the day. Really, that's the best matchup I'm seeing on the board. Kyle Hendricks is everybody knows how great of a pitcher Kyle Hendricks is, and Rich Hill, he is hanging on for dear life. He's not a bad pitcher at all whatsoever, and he's had a pretty good time in Minnesota. He's been a pretty solid pitcher so far, and Minnesota, they need it. They need this win so bad. And the Chicago Cubs, they're still trying to separate themselves from the pack and really get back to the top of the NL. They have a puncher's chance to get into that number 1 seed, but I don't think they'll be able to get it. Let's see. We'll see how how they fare in that series. Texas and LA, skip. Hard pass. You got San Fran at Oakland. Trevor Cahill versus Chris Bassett. Chris Bassett's been absolutely nasty this year. I will definitely be watching that game mainly because I'm a total fanboy over the Oakland A's. And then to close it out, arguably the best pitching matchup. Now, I do like this pitcher a lot, even though he hasn't really given us a ton in the bigs since he came over from Asia. You got Chris Paddock versus Yusei Kikuchi, San Diego and Seattle. I like that matchup. I like that pitching matchup. I just like the way Kikuchi throws. I'll definitely be tuning into that. Granted, I don't think that is a real, that's a must-watch in any sense of the word. Saturday, though. Saturday, you have some arms. My goodness. I just turned this on right now. I just turned it over, and wow, there are some... I think, oh my God, so many arms. Let's see. So you got Johnny Cueto, Frankie Montas, Hyun-Jin Ryu, Spencer Turnbull, Tristan McKenzie, Max Scherzer, Dylan Cease, Ian Anderson, Michael Wacha, Luke Weaver, Corbin Burns, J.A. Happ, Charlie Morton, Clayton Kershaw, Michael Pineda, Lance Lynn, Mike Clevenger, Justice Sheffield. Alec Mills is making another start after his no-hitter. Tomorrow, Saturday is the day for pitching. Let's see if we can find the best pitching matchup out here. So far, Johnny Cueto and Frankie Montas really sparks my attention. That really grabs me. I want to watch that game. Let's see, best pitching matchup. I do kind of like the Charlie Morton versus Jorge Lopez. I've never seen Jorge Lopez throw, but I do like Charlie Morton. And Charlie Morton did get roughed up by Baltimore at the start of the year. So I really do think that, I do think that's going to be a pretty decent matchup. Let's see. Pretty good. Let's see. I do like the Tristan McKenzie versus Spencer Turnbull matchup. And I also am really big on Mike Clevenger and Justice Sheffield. I do think Justice Sheffield is a good pitcher. I don't know how he's really fared this year. Haven't watched a lot of Seattle. Don't really blame me for that one. But I think this is definitely going to be the time where I turn it on and actually watch him throw this year. Do we have any double headers? It doesn't look like we have any double headers on Saturday, but everybody does seem to be going one time through. So that's going to be... And the games start at 3 o'clock in a 5-hour stretch. I don't know why they start these games at 3 o'clock. It's like 1:10 on the West. Why don't you start them at like 11:30 on the West? And just have like an all-day thing, kind of like how football does it. Like, they can start earlier in the morning. It's okay. But yeah, Saturday, looking like it's going to be a big day. Big day for baseball. Not a huge day for college football, so baseball is going to get a ton of ratings today, or a ton of ratings. And all right, everybody, that is going to be our show. I will be back on Tuesday with a brand new episode. Enjoy your weekend, enjoy your families, and be sure to enjoy this weekend slate of baseball. You can follow me on Instagram at EvanWorley23. You can play me in Tap Baseball if you're bored. Nickname is EvanWorley23. And I would like to thank you for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you to please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review, because it really helps us out. And if you could follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you all, and have a great weekend. I will see y'all on Tuesday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.